Hello, 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 hello. It's good afternoon. How's lunch? Good, good, good. All right. So as you know, we're beginning the second half of the program for today, and it is my great pleasure to bring back someone that I know and love, that I've spent a good deal of time with over the years. Kevin Benedict is going to run a fireside chat. We know Kevin. We have spent several years with him. He always brings his insight, humor, energy, and can-do attitude to the program, which we're very happy for. So Kevin, please come to the stage.
Am I on? Do I have a mic? Yeah, I'm on. Good. Okay. Well, I'm glad we're extending our lunch to this next one because we're going to have a box lunch. Yeah, there we go. So that's the best joke I have today. Sorry about it. I want to introduce the CSO, Chief Strategy Officer, and SVP of Platforms with Box, Jeetu Patel. Come on up, Jeetu. Why don't you sit here? And I'll sit here. There we go. So, very good. And thank you for coming out here.
Thank you for having me.
So when you're in somebody's backyard having a barbecue and they ask, what do you do? What's the answer?
I usually first ask what's for lunch.
Okay.
But we started our business about 11 years ago. And it was a very simple problem we wanted to solve, which is it's really hard for people to get access to their information on any device and be able to share it with people and collaborate on it securely, whether it's with people within their organization or outside their organizations. Mm-hmm. And so that was the problem we wanted to solve, and that's what we do at Box. So we, lo and behold, we decided to build an app for it. And it turns out, 11 years later, people really love it. We've got about, a little over 41 million users, 7,000 customers. We've got about, our customers range from 3-person companies all the way to GE at 300,000 seats, and so we've actually spanned the spectrum, and it's been kind of a great ride. And now we're going into what we call our second act, which is we've built this great app, and now wouldn't it be nice to also have that same functionality in hundreds of thousands of other applications that people are building where they don't have to go out and build a content and collaboration system. So if you're serving up content, we actually have now made our platform available also to be embedded into other applications. So that's kind of the business we are in, is helping people share, collaborate securely, and do it in a way that doesn't create more work.
Now, that sounds very mature for a company who comes from an industry that's kind of recognized or has a reputation for being the shadow IT.
Yeah. So
how have you kind of made that change to being actually from the outside to be an integral part of an IT organization?
And this was in fact a pretty big decision that the company made a while ago. I wasn't there at the time. I was in fact competing with them. But the decision that was made was we're going to go out and make sure that we focus on the way that the market works is you actually look at great user experiences and really good security as mutually exclusive. There are companies that do great user experiences. There are companies that do great security. And they're two separate set of companies. And we think that either of those scenarios tend to actually provide a very insecure outcome. Because if the most insecure thing you can do is have a great security kind of backbone to your product, but no one wants to use it. Because what they do is they just find an end around. Mm-hmm. Right? So we wanted to go out and make sure we maniacally focus on both. And so right from the beginning, we've actually focused on building a great user experience that consumers and users within organizations love, but also make sure that we are actually serving the needs of IT and admins so that they can go out and deploy this at scale. So we've got companies like Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble and GE, who are all customers of ours, that are deploying it to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users.
Okay, so Jeetu, this is a conference that's themed around mobility, has a mobility theme. What role does mobility play, or how are you supporting the enterprise mobility market?
Yes, we've been in this market for a while. So we, our 3 core pillars are cloud, mobile, and security, right, if you think about it. So We really want to focus on making sure that things are accessible from any device, anywhere. So our core philosophy is people should be able to do on any device what they can do from any other device. So if you're on the web, we'll go out and optimize the experience for the web. If you go on your phone, I'm going to be on the road for 3 or 4 days, and chances are I'll probably never turn on my laptop. I turn on my laptop for a few minutes here or there, but most of the time I'm going to be on my phone, and I should be able to work with all of my content, be able to share it, collaborate with people just as easily. And so mobile is a core part of our kind of value proposition, has always been. And now what we're also doing is making sure we make our platform available. So as you're building mobile apps and as you want great, rich experiences of content to be embedded in those mobile apps, we'd actually provide those.
Wonderful. So we also, as one of the key themes here, is digital transformation. And you hear it, I hear it, we talk about it all the time.
Yep.
So when you're looking at the overall digital transformation initiative, how is Box and the Box platform positioning themselves to be a player there?
So you folks have heard the saying, software is eating the world, right? How many over here, by the way, are familiar with Box with a show of hands? Oh, great. This is great. This is awesome. I came from EMC prior to this, and whenever I'd ask how many people know who EMC is, and that was a $25 billion company, and there'd be the 4 people that raised their hand, so this is great. On the digital transformation side, what we're starting to see is, you folks have all heard the saying, software is eating the world. Mark Andreessen famously talked about that 5 years ago. We just reached the 5th year anniversary, and our belief is that eventually every company is going to get digitally either disrupted or be a digital disruptor. And we'll have a core differentiation vector be around the digital kind of dimension, right? And so if every company is going to be a digital company, they're going to create these amazing experiences for the extended ecosystem of customers, suppliers, partners, as they go at it. And the question isn't whether or not you will go digital, because the reality is right now, virtually every industry is going out and rethinking not just how they're going to get disrupted, but what is their place going to be in the new ecosystem, right? Because whether you look at, and it's not even that obvious sometimes. So when one industry changes, there's a ripple effect that happens across a multitude of industries. So let's just take self-driving cars, for instance. You have autonomous driving vehicles. It's very obvious when that happens that there's going to be a level of transformation that happens within the auto industry. What's not as obvious is that there's going to be massive changes that happen within insurance, because who's going to own liability of coverage when you actually have self-driving cars? It's going to happen within urban planning, because 90% of the times, cars are going to be on the road rather than parked, whereas today, 90% of the times, cars are parked. So you've got a massive parking infrastructure within urban cities, right? You look at advertising. 1 in every 3 commercials that happens during the Super Bowl is of an automobile. I have a 5-year-old daughter. She might actually never learn how to drive, right? And it's actually fascinating that you'd have these kind of seismic shifts that happen within such a compressed amount of time. And these are all kind of fundamental structural shifts that are going to happen in our business model. And those shifts are happening regardless of the industry that you're in. So you could be someone like Uber, Airbnb, and Netflix, and you're going to worry about disruption to your business. And you could be a 200-year-old insurance company or a healthcare company, and you'll worry about kind of disruption to your business. So regardless of the kind of maturity of the company or how long you've been around, you'll actually see that digital transformation will tend to impact you. And so what we are starting to see is, as this digital transformation occurs, there's going to be this whole notion of a different way that applications get built and a different way that business models start getting constructed. So there's this whole concept of entrepreneurs within organizations, which most of you, I suspect, are, where you're not going out and starting a startup, but you're going to be within large companies, and you're going to go out and do something that's very catalytic, and it's going to go out and fundamentally change the business model. And as that happens, you'll see this different way that applications get built out, where you'll kind of glue components together, and your half-life within which your application needs to get built is getting massively compressed, right? So if you look today, there's going to be probably about a 18 to 24-month cycle that a product actually is viable within the market. So you can't take, if the half-life of the product is a very short half-life, you can't take 36 months to get your product to market, because guess what? By the time you get it to market, it's dated, right? So you have to have very kind of fast velocity cycle times within which you have to get these experiences out to market and keep iterating them as that goes on. And so we think that this entire fundamental concept of digital transformation will have a ripple effect across multitude of industries. And we as IT leaders, we as folks that are in charge of practices like mobile and cloud will continue to have a pretty kind of leading role as we move forward over there.
Got it. So you're talking to CIOs, CTOs, C-level people all the time.
Yep.
How do you convince them that it's a good idea to keep content outside in the cloud? Is that still the same level of concern as it used to be?
So it's interesting. 4 or 5 years ago, if we'd go out to a customer and we'd say, come use Box, the biggest objection you'd get is, you're not secure enough, so we're not going to use you. Today, in fact, the reason customers are coming to us is because the security posture in the cloud is actually safer than that on-prem for data centers. In fact, if you look at most security breaches that have happened over the course of the past few years, they've happened on on-prem data center infrastructure rather than cloud. So what you're starting to see is, the Department of Defense is using Box, and there's, the large organizations which are very security conscious actually use Box, in fact, for some classes of content, which they would feel more secure keeping in Box rather than keeping in their own data centers. So you're starting to see this kind of shift from kind of a cloud behavior perspective where people are getting much more adopted to using Box. And I also think human behavior is changing. Right? So if I was thinking about this when I was coming up. So I have a 75-year-old mother, and she is an amazing lady, and she very disproportionately loves me, right? Like she thinks I can do no wrong. Whatever I do, there's always this backup where my mom's going to think it's okay. But she loves her dog, a little bit more than she loves me, right? And she loves her broadband a little bit more than she loves her dog. And every single time, there are times when she'll pull me out of a meeting and she'll say, Jeetu, my internet's down. Lady barely speaks any English, but she wants her internet, right? And if I tell her, Mom, I'll fix it for you at night, she'll be really disappointed going, do I have to go all day without the internet? And that's actually a common pattern, not just for my 5-year-old daughter, who was born using the iPad, and we've created bad habits for her from the time she was 18 months old, but even my mother, who can't do without broadband. So I think it's a way of life at this point in time where, it's just something that'll happen. It's a thing that you can't stop something whose time has come. People will move to the cloud. It's just a matter of at what velocity and what kind of workloads are going to move to the cloud first versus next.
So we've all grown up reading what the analysts say and looking at the buckets that analysts put different solutions. What bucket do you guys put yourself in today?
We are squarely in what we call the enterprise content management. We call ourselves a modern content platform. And here's the challenge. So if you look at content management as a market, it's a completely screwed up market. Fortunately, unfortunately, I've been in it for 22 years, which, my childhood fantasy was to be a NASCAR driver. I figured, a close second is managed documents. That might be a... if you look at the content management market, there's a fundamental difference between that enterprise software market versus any other software market. So let's compare to CRM or HR. In CRM, you go out and you buy a product like Salesforce, and then everyone within your organization standardizes on Salesforce. Everyone starts using Salesforce. That becomes your system of record. You go to Workday, and you go out and standardize on Workday, and everyone starts using Workday for your HR systems. Now you go to content management. On average, people have 17 of these systems in their organization, right? And there's a new one that crops up every single day. And the reason that happens is because most of the times, what you've done is the core content is tied to the way that people use that content. In fact, I was speaking to a gentleman from IDC, and he was asking me, where are you, Sanjay? Are you here in the crowd? There he is. He was asking me, he said, so how do you guys think about design thinking at Box? And this whole notion of UIs and design, and how do you go out and part of our thinking at Box is 50% of our volume at Box actually happens from systems that are not Box clients. Those are coming from other third-party systems. So the way that we are thinking about user interfaces is very different, where we actually need to have an embedded model as well, where we need to have an infinite number of interaction models to our content. So if you happen to be in Salesforce as a sales rep, I don't want to break your flow of how you're going out and getting your job done. You're looking at an opportunity within Salesforce, and you want to look at a proposal associated to that opportunity that's sitting in Box. You should be able to retrieve that proposal right from within your Salesforce instance. You don't have to leave Salesforce and go into Box to retrieve it. So we actually make a tight integration into Salesforce. If you're in Office 365 with Microsoft and you're starting to do that, we'll actually make sure that we can integrate in Office 365. And we have 1,600 such kind of partnerships in play, and about 50% of our API volume now comes from third parties, right? Not from the Box client. So the point over here is that you're going to start seeing that there's this entire notion of interoperability that'll happen across a multitude of different systems. So regardless of the application that you're using, our philosophy is we are squarely in the enterprise content management category. And what we want to do that's different is we want to be able to have people access content from Box regardless of the application that they're using. So if you're using Slack and you want to access content from Box, you should be able to do it. If you're using Microsoft Office 365, you should be able to do it. If you're using Salesforce, you should be able to do it. NetSuite, Workday, Google Apps, whatever your application is of your choice, you should be able to go out and secure your content in a certain way, apply policy in a certain way, and then be able to make sure that that content's made available in any app that you so choose to desire to go out and get it access from. And so that's the market that we're disrupting. And making sure that part of that is custom applications. So if you as an insurance company are building a custom application for submission of a claim, you should be able to submit a claim and that securely goes into Box. You're a wealth management company and FINRA compliance is important to you, and you have an investor advisor client portal, you should be able to go out and put content into that, and it sits in Box where you don't have to worry about compliance. So those are the kind of workloads and use cases that we're thinking about.
Got it. So I was doing some research prior to us coming up here, and I see a lot of mention within Box material of encouraging companies to consider what's core and what's not core, and to identify what they really should be doing and what they should let more specialized third parties do. Talk to us about that in the context of Box.
So we all use Uber, correct? And I think Uber is in this audience somewhere as well. So if you think about Uber and the mobile app they have, Uber, firstly, they don't own their own cars. They don't own their own drivers, right? But they actually don't even own the infrastructure that runs on. They use Amazon Web Services. The map that you see in Uber, in fact, calls upon the Google Mapping API. When you see a car arrive and it texts you, that's actually calling the Twilio API. When you reach your destination and you need to transact a payment, that's calling the Braintree API. They haven't gone out and built their own payment stack. When you have to get a receipt for the payment that you've made, that's calling the SendGrid API. So essentially, a company that doesn't own its own cars, doesn't own its own drivers, doesn't own its own infrastructure for storage and compute, doesn't own its own infrastructure for mapping, or for communications, or for payments, or for email, what they unmistakably own is curating an amazing experience for the user, right? Everything else is not core to them. That's kind of something that's core to the other people whose products that they use, but it's not core to them. And so what they're doing is they're using those components to kind of pull it all together. And what that does is it does a couple things for them. One is it gives them an innovation tailwind, because every single time any of those providers go out and enhance their capabilities, guess what? Uber actually gets better, right? The second thing it does is it actually gives you a far better experience than what you would be able to do by yourself. The reality is here's the difference between the physical world and the digital world. And this is why this is so important that you focus on a few things. If you think in the physical world, let's say it's Saturday morning, Kevin, and you go into your bank because you want to go out and deposit some checks because you somehow don't have a mobile app on your phone that does that. After that, you go into a Toyota dealership. You're feeling a little wealthy, you want to go buy a car, right? And then after that, let's say you go to Barney's and you want to go buy some clothes. typically in the physical world, we don't compare those three experiences to one another. We don't say, oh, I walked into Bank of America, and boy, that experience for Bank of America is very different from that I saw at Barney's. This is terrible, right? Now think about the digital world. And I log into my investment advisor website to go out and check my balance in my trading account. And then I go to my insurance company and renew my car insurance. And then I go to my healthcare provider and I could go out and check some details about a surgery I recently had. And then let's say I've got some work that I need to do. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to compare all of those experiences to one another. Immediately, you're also going to compare that experience to Airbnb and say, what's the login experience look like? Is the design just as elegant as Airbnb? And so the reality over here is you could be a healthcare company or a life sciences company or an insurance or a bank, but you're not just competing with your direct competitors. What you're competing with is a set of expectations that are being set by the best of the very best in the digital era. And if you're too far distant from that kind of experience, most people get frustrated and they won't come back to you and use you again, right? So you have to have this kind of amazingly curated experience, and in order to do that, you're not going to be able to do everything. So you're going to need to make sure you rely on some other folks for going out and providing those components to you that you can assemble together as you build these great digital experiences, especially as you go into mobile and all of that, where the patience level that people have for going out and using mobile applications, which are not elegantly designed and which haven't really thought through the details, tends to be pretty low. So I think that's an area where we believe at Box that what you're going to start seeing happen is this new way of development where people will focus on their core, and everything that's not their core, they'll actually go out and look to other companies to go out and provide it. So if you want to focus on building content management capability within your application, you're not going to build your content management stack like you used to in the past. You might just go to Box and call 5 APIs, and those 5 API calls might give you what would have otherwise taken you 2.5 years to build. You know, and what that does is accelerates your velocity of how quickly you can get applications to market.
Very compelling value proposition, and you're a very persuasive speaker. I know at Cognizant...
If I weren't, would you tell me? At this forum?
No,
Okay.
not up here.
Okay, that's right.
But my team at Cognizant in our digital works group selected to partner with Box as well.
We love working with
So you're
Cognizant.
compelling to there too, because they see the same kind of value proposition and they have some big ambitions for that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, for example, at Cognizant, they have a practice around digital transformation. And so the people that we're working with closely are the ones that are going out and helping business models kind of shift. So if you think about the second act of Box, our first act was go out and change the way that people work. Our second act is go out and rethink the way that business models are getting structured, and how can we go out and help in that journey. And Cognizant's a great partner, so thank you for being a great partner for us.
Thank you, and let's give a hand to Jeetu Patel.
Thank you.
Thank you.